In terms of making the yoke look a bit prettier, one of the cosmetic changes I want to make is to add some relief to this part of the stem clamp. By that I mean really reduce the thickness top to bottom of the stem clamp very slightly by around about 1mm from the top, and in doing so add a radius around the stem centre itself. That's not drawn particularly well, but hopefully it makes sense as to what I mean. So as always, the workpiece is clamped to the rotary table. The rotary table centre is directly below the centre of the spindle. I'm going to keep the y-axis front to back fixed, so this is locked, it will not move in that direction, but I will offset it on the x-axis by moving the table to left and therefore bringing the mill over to this section. I'm not going to do the cut just yet. So hopefully you can see what I mean. Just bring the cutter down close. I'm not quite sure, I need to go and check the measurements if I don't end up doing it by eye, and effectively machine something off around that radius. Let me go and check the dimensions. Checking the CAD, what I should have is a 30mm radius from the centre point of the stem to the contact point for both of the back sides where they touch that circle as tangents. The reality is that these back edges were machined by eye, so it's not going to be that accurate. So what I've done anyway is I've offset the table by the radius, which is 30mm, and half the radius of the cutter. That takes me up to 39.5mm. I will actually probably push it out a little bit further and work my way back in. So I'll probably start at, say, 40.5mm, make a cut, see what it looks like, come back into 39.5, or sorry, 40.5, take a cut at 40.5, take another cut at 40, and then see how it's looking for the final cut at 39. I'm only looking to take 1mm off in terms of thickness, so it's not a big cut. Let's bring it to 40mm and we'll try again. So that's 39.8. It's not quite touching as a tangent here, and on this side it's looking a lot better, so I think that's as far as I'm going to go. I might come down depth wise and a little bit further. Another cosmetic touch, I want to round off these four edges on the stem clamp, so I've got a little radius tool fitted to the quill. I've already found this face, so that's programmed into DRO, as well as the rear face from the camera's point of view. The cutter is a 2.5mm radius, and it has a little stub on the bottom which is 3mm diameter, so I need to offset the cutter by 1.5mm. I will also need to find the surface, and I'll just use a bit of fag paper to do that. All I'm doing is working to the point at which the tool wedges the paper. Alright, happy with that. We'll just give it a bit of a clean up with some emery. My 2mm thick slitting saw has been delivered, but when I've got it fitted to the arbor in the quill, as we can see, there's not a lot of clearance between the saw and the solid parts of the quill. So that's going to cause me a problem because I need more clearance in here to make the cuts I need to make on the yoke. So to get over that, I had to fashion myself a homemade arbor. This is quite a simple turning exercise. A bit of 5/8 bar here, Loctited and pinned into a larger size section of mandrel with a little 22mm shoulder on which the blade will sit. It's all fit on there. I use the existing clamp. The 5/8 bar will fit into a 5/8 collet, which itself will fit into the spindle or the quill. And as we can see, significantly more clearance between the blade and the bottom part of the quill there. So good, we'll crack on with that. To find the centre where I'm going to cut the slit, I use the vernier height gauge to first determine the height from the table of the edge here, the side here of the clamping part, and from that taken half the thickness, which is 21mm, it's 42mm thickness, and marked accordingly with some engineer's blue and the vernier height gauge on the yoke itself where the slit is to be cut. It's a 2mm thick slitting saw, so I've marked the centre line and both the top and the bottom lines of where the slit should be. As we can see, I've got the yoke firmly clamped in this position on the table, actually via an angle plate which is behind the yoke here. There's a square here to give me a register to make sure it's sitting vertically, effectively off that front face. So I'm going to line this up by eye and take the cut. For the fork clamps, I'm going to take pretty much the same approach as I did for the stem clamp. I have, after a bit more thought, returned to the 1mm thick cutting disc for the fork leg clamps. I think it will look better with a thinner slit here and a thicker slit down at the stem. Also, for the fork leg clamps, I'm able to fit the slitting saw into the 3MT arbor, and I don't need to use the one I made myself. Again, for the marking out of the slit, I've used a vernier height gauge. This time I'm actually using an absolute measurement off the table surface, which is 194.5mm. So for the 1mm thick disc, that's 194 to 195mm. The top line's a bit messy there, but it's the bottom line I can go by, and I'm not sure how well it comes out on the camera, but there's also two lines scribed on the rear face of the yoke as well. So I'll get that lined up by eye and we'll make the cut. Right, definitely challenge clearance wise. I should have stuck with my homemade mandrel, but there we go. I don't know if that's visible, but the saw has broken through on this side, which is good. It's also broken through on the other side, so there's a section there in the middle that I can't get to. But that wasn't ideal, but I did manage to finish the cut. As we can see, it's all the way through. I have given it a little clean up to take the burrs off. To finish the cut though, I did have to literally use the saw blade manually just to finish off that last little section I couldn't get to in the middle there. But it's good. Let's give it a clean up, see if it fits on the fork and see if it clamps, and we'll get on and do the other side. Cutting the slit for the other fork leg was a repeat of the first side. I had the same issue again with clearance, so I did have to finish off the cut by using the slitting saw by hand just to finish off that little gap in the middle there. With those two slits now cut, all the functional elements of the yoke are now complete. So we've got the clamping arrangement for the stem, we've got the clamping arrangement with the associated bolts for both of the fork legs. In terms of cosmetics, I'm not going to make any further changes now until I get to finalise the bike, so I may make some tweaks later on, but otherwise it is done. I did have to remove a fair bit more from the underneath of the yoke. Firstly, I ran into an issue with the washer that sits on top of the steering head bearing, something I hadn't had in place when I did the initial measurements. So I've had to open it out slightly with these two recesses here to allow it to sit over that washer. Also, the rear of the yoke was actually fouling with the tank seam at the very front of the petrol tank. So again, I've machined these shoulders to remove that problem. It's all good now and it's a good fit and it doesn't foul anywhere. In terms of this set of videos, this will be the last. I'm done. I'll include at the end a couple of pictures of the yoke fitted on the bike. The bike is far from complete, but I will show the yoke fitted onto the forks and stem, fitted into the steering head, so we can see how it looks, and also with the Motoscope Pro in position.